Feels like at that point, the Suns are going to stretch the remaining $96.9 million over 5 years to lessen their cap hit. So when I tell you that, initially everybody's thoughts are this is doom and gloom, this is terrible, this is a really bad decision. I want to get your take on what you make of the possibility that we've been discussing for a while on the show of waiving and stretching Bradley Beal over 5 years.
So no different than us learning over the weekend as well that the Suns were offered Cam Whitmore in the Kevin Durant trade.
Yes.
And they decided against it for bookkeeping purposes, but also for the valuing of the picks as well. So that's no to this part of it, but yes to this part because we have a plan that we're working towards. This feels like, okay, we've assessed the lay of the land with Bradley Beal and his valuing of him on this contract. There's nothing there for us that can get pushed across the finish line. This is our best route. Let's see what we have on the other side of that. And if we do get to this point where we can't do anything with them but waive and stretch, then we can go to this plan 1A or 1B, if you will. This feels like them doing something because they have a plan in place with the new space that they would be opening up under all of the aprons, as well as having access to the MLE. So clarity is starting to surface again. I'm looking forward to seeing what it is that they have planned out and how they execute that, but it feels like they're moving with great intention right now.
Yeah. Okay. So before we dive into the pros and cons, I want to break down a little bit of the math because I think people are confused about how all of this works. So Bradley Beal has $110.8 million left on his deal. And you cannot waive and stretch him outright like the Bucks did with Dame, because when the Bucks did that with Dame, they had enough money under this 15% threshold that the NBA has, which you can only devote 15% of the salary cap for the upcoming season to waive and stretch money. So for the upcoming season, it's like $154.6 million salary cap. 15% of that is like $23.2 million. The Bucks, by taking the remaining money on Dame's contract and spreading it out over 5 years, that'd be an annual value of like 22.5. So that's less than that 23.2. If you did the same with Beal's $111 million, basically, it would also be less than 23.2. But the problem is the Suns have $3.8 million of dead money when they waived and stretched Nasir Little and when they waived and stretched EJ Liddell. So if you add that 3.8 to Beal's 22 and change, it would be over that threshold. It would push them to like 26, which is not allowed by the NBA. So in order to make the math work, the Suns have to get Bradley Beal to sacrifice $13.9 million or more, because then when they stretch it out over those 5 years, it's going to be something like $19.4 million. That plus the 3.8 is less than the 23.2 million threshold. So I just wanted to explain that to everybody because there's confusion about that.
So pause it, rewind it, listen to it again, and then pick up right here.
Yes, because that is very confusing. I understand not everyone is mathematically inclined, and the salary cap is kind of a pain in the ass most of the time. So now that we've got that out of the way, the next question is, why wouldn't they just take the hit over these 2 years instead of extending the problem 5 years? Like, why don't they just pay him his $53.7 million for the upcoming season, potentially pay him his $57.1 million next year when he has a player option? Why don't they try to make it work under Jordan Ott? Why don't they pay him and send him home if he's a problem or if they don't like the fit? Why don't they, squeak out this upcoming year and then potentially waive and stretch his contract next year, which would be there's only 1 year remaining and it would be over 3 years? Well, the answer to that is Bradley Beal, is not a good on-court or off-court fit for this organization with the new culture that they're trying to establish. They're trying to get younger, more defensive-minded. Beal just doesn't fit. Positionally, he also is at a position where there's a lot of overlap between Booker and Jalen Green and Grayson Allen. And you could even include like Royce O'Neal and Dylan Brooks in that wing lineup because they're shorter wings at like 6'6". So there's a lot of overlap there. I think Beal is ready for a new opportunity. I've reported this many times. Beal has not used his no trade clause to shoot down a trade. He hasn't been approached with a trade because there wasn't one out there. And that was the Suns' first priority, was trying to trade him. They weren't able to do that, not because of the no trade clause, but because he makes $50 million and he's more of a $25, $30 million player. But all of these things being considered, the Suns want to get off of Bradley Beal's contract because it gets them under not just the second apron, but the first apron as well. It gets them out of the luxury tax. And by getting out of those aprons, they free up the ability to aggregate outgoing salaries in trades. They can send cash in trades. They can take back more money in a trade than they send out. They can do sign-in trades. They can use their MLE in free agency without being hard capped at the second apron, which would have been impossible before because they were already above the second apron. So there's a lot of things that go into this beyond just, we don't like Bradley Beal, we want to, make a long-term mistake. There's also the long-term effect of trying to unfreeze your 2032 draft pick, which is currently frozen, and making sure that it doesn't go to the end of the first round, which it will if you are in the second apron like 2 out of the next 4 or 3 out of the next 4 seasons. So by ducking these aprons, you are doing something beyond just get rid of Bradley Beal, let's be short-sighted, we're trying to contend right now. I don't think this is about contending right now. I think it's about making sure that over these next 1 to 2 years, when you're retooling around Devin Booker, you have the flexibility to make trades. You have the ability to get Beal's salary down much lower. And I think there are advantages to that people are not really talking about.
Yep. And I think one of the advantages is always you never know what might shake in your favor down the line. There's no crystal ball where you can predict all the time what's going to happen. I'm sure the Lakers had no idea they have opportunity to get Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
But if their books weren't together, they wouldn't have been able to make that happen in the surprising fashion that they did. Similarly, don't know if the Suns knew that Kevin Durant was going to be available to even have those conversations with when they made that trade. They had all of their ducks in a row, and they were able to make that happen. And obviously, with Matt Ishbia is pushing across the finish line. You don't want to be in that situation where you're in the retool, and let's just say come February, there's a disgruntled star that might align with everything that you want positionally as well as characteristically. You don't want to miss out on that because you don't have home together. You want to get your house in order so that you can bring something new in that can expedite it and now put you in that position where you're back in the playoffs firmly and trending more towards contending.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, like there are a number of other reasons beyond it. Like the repeater tax is a legitimate thing, not just because we saw last year how expensive the payroll and luxury tax was. It was, highest in the NBA. But this year, the tax brackets change. They actually jump up and ratchet up even more if you are a repeat tax offender, which the Suns are because they've been in the luxury tax since 2022, 23, I believe. That is an issue in terms of what you are paying for a team that I think we all agree is taking a step back next year so that they can take steps forward. There's no point in staying in the second apron for a team like this that's trying to get younger, that understands that they're going to take some lumps this upcoming season, especially if it puts you in a position beyond this season where you can maybe do some things, where you can have that trade flexibility. The other thing that I think people are missing, because they talk about how, we're going to be paying this guy $19 million a year for the next 5 years. He's going to eat up all our cap space. We're not going to be able to sign free agents. That cap space, that $19.4 million that they're going to be paying for Beal, only matters if the Suns are an under the cap team. Because if you are an over the cap team, you don't have cap space to sign free agents anyway. You're limited to the same mid-level exception, the biannual exception if you want to use that, the vet minimums. Those are the things that you're having to work with. So the Suns, knowing how competitive they are, knowing that they want to maximize what's left of Devin Booker's prime over these next 2 to 3 years beyond this season, I would be very shocked if they are an under the cap team that has cap room that is somehow being eaten up by Bradley Beal's $19 million. It doesn't help in that respect. But the Suns are likely going to be an over the cap team regardless. People are going to point to, they have a lot of rookie contracts coming up, and outside of Book, they don't have a ton of salary. They still have Jalen Green. If you're talking about looking ahead to 2027, when Beal's contract was supposed to come off the books, Jalen Green has a $36 million player option. Grayson Allen has a player option. Royce O'Neal is still on the last year of his contract. They were only going to have, if you look at the rookie salaries as they go up, they were only going to have somewhere around $20 million in cap space. And that's not accounting for a Mark Williams extension. That's not accounting for other players they might sign with this MLE in free agency this year or next year. 2 years is too far in advance to be projecting Beal's going to eat all our salary cap space. That only matters if you have an owner that doesn't want to go into the luxury tax.
Yeah.
As long as they stay beneath that second apron, that's going to be the hard part. That's the part where they have to make the most of their wiggle room and avoid going back into the second apron, because then your pick's frozen again. Then, you risk that pick being moved to the end of the first round. That's when all the penalties come back. But if that $19 million is really just dead money and it's affecting no one other than Matt Ishbia's luxury tax payments, they were going to be an over the cap team anyway. Beal's $19 million is immaterial. And also the salary cap continues to rise year by year. If it continues to rise from like 2027, 28 by 10% each year, by the time you're in year 3, year 4, year 5 of his deal, it's going to be like 10% of the cap, 8% of the cap, 7% of the cap. That's not as terrible as it seems if you just look at the lump $19 million sum.
Yeah. And I think it's honestly, this probably is a question for you too. So I feel like, especially knowing the impact of the all of the aprons and everything that it entails for your future going forward, not just on the roster, but future picks, et cetera, it feels like foresight is something that is as much of an asset under the new CBA than it was in any of the prior CBAs, just because you literally tie yourself hand and ankle to ankle behind yourself, and you just can't function. It feels like they're moving with the intention, understanding that they know that they made a bed that they had to lay in for a little bit, and then they're realizing now, after moving Kevin Durant, that they need to just have some space to breathe for a minute. Yeah. And it feels like they're doing a great job inching their way incrementally towards that. But is there anything specific you would want to see them do with Bradley Beal, or after the Bradley Beal situation is settled?
Yeah, because I think people in the chat are very upset about the possibility of Beal being waived and stretched. And I got news for you. You better wrap your minds around it, because it's probably coming soon. But the idea that they have to use this MLE that they get now, I think they will be under the luxury tax if they waive and stretch him. So they'll have full access to the MLE that starts at $14.1 million. I don't know if there are many players out there that I would devote the full $14 million to. I would say the 3 that are at the top of my list in terms of MLE targets are Chris Paul, DeAnthony Melton, and Malcolm Brogdon, which we got news today that the Suns are interested in Malcolm Brogdon from the Steinline's Jake Fisher. They're one of like 8 teams that he listed that the Wizards are interested in a sign and trade to facilitate a move. So I'm not sure what exactly that would look like in terms of what would be going to Washington if it was a sign and trade. For me, I would be happy with any of those 3 guys that I named, but it's not even just about like what you use your MLE on right now. It's about just having the trade flexibility, because we knew last year, every trade scenario that we painted, it was like, well, this guy's contract is less than this guy, so we can actually trade for him. And instead, you could stack Grayson and Royce into something, or Royce and Nick, or Grayson and Nick Richards. Like you have more flexibility to acquire higher level salaries that can help you for the foreseeable future. So yes, they have their work cut out for them to make it work, to shift this roster into something good. But I really think people that are going crazy in the comments right now are not listening to the potential benefits. I think long-term, yeah, $19.4 million on the salary cap sheet looks terrible. I also think it's kind of an emotional response to, we're having to pay Bradley Beal still to not play for the team. They don't want him in Phoenix, and Beal wants to play elsewhere. If you sent him home, that's a toxic situation that looks bad for Beal, that looks bad for the Suns and how they treat players. This is facilitating a breakup so that he can have his choice to sign with some other team. And for the Suns, there are benefits to this that are not just what do you do with the MLE this year. It's the trade flexibility. It's the pick flexibility moving forward. It's ducking the second tax apron and not spending an inordinate amount of money and freezing yourself up for what's left of Devin Booker's prime on a team that's probably going to win maybe as many games as last year. I don't know.
Yeah. It makes sense when you're assessing things as a whole and you're understanding of exactly what you need to do to take those steps. It's not going to be a big leap. You're not just going to, completely just duck one part of the process. It's a process for a reason. It's probably going to be a little slow developing on that side of it. I think on the talent side, they'll probably be a little bit ahead of where they may have anticipated they would be, considering they weren't looking to bring back the most talent in a KD trade or in a potential Beal trade, or even worse, in a waive and stretch where you don't get anything in return for them. So again, it just feels like they're setting themselves up for some success, and then they're going to allow for the process of building the foundation with Ott and company in tow, as well as the rookies, kind of lead the way in terms of how quickly the retool process is going to go for them.
We all silly like the mayor.